Greetings all, this is Nick from Those Hairy Gamers. We're back to do some more content on Magic the Gathering. I have with me here Justin from Those Hairy Gamers. How you doing, dude?
Not too bad.
Excellent, excellent. We have set ourselves a little challenge to do week by week. Justin, why don't you explain to the nice people at home what that challenge is?
So each week we've set ourselves a challenge. We're going to build a deck in Standard around a rare or mythic rare card.
Indeed, and for the time being we're going to be picking those cards at random, but if you guys want to comment and tell us, hey, you should do this card or that card, we'll do it, that's fine. We actually posted this last week on our Facebook page, this post here detailing the idea of what we're doing here, and we also posted the card that we're doing today, Herald of Anguish.
So the card reads, Herald of Anguish, 5 and 2 black mana. He's a creature demon and is a 5/5. He has Improvise. Your artifacts can help cast a spell. Each artifact you tap after you've done activating mana abilities pays for 1. Flying, at the beginning of your end step, each opponent discards a card. 1 and a black mana, sacrifice an artifact. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn.
Cool, so we've got a lot going on there. We've basically got almost 4 relevant things that we can build decks around. Let's leave flying for now. That's not really going to affect the way we build a deck, but we've got Improvise, we attack the hand, and we attack our opponent's board. Those are 3 big factors that we're looking at. So we had lots of different ideas about how to approach this, sort of different color combinations and whatnot. So some honorable mentions we're just going to do before we get into our decks.
So with the standard decks, I've built a mono black deck. Nick's built a black-white deck. I did have a quick thought on adding blue to my deck. It would change it quite a bit, but adding blue gives you Metallic Rebuke, which is a counterspell with Improvise.
Oh, yeah.
There's another Improvise card that draws you 3 cards. And then there's also Tezzeret's Touch and Tezzeret the Schemer. Both of those are really powerful with artifact. They get to turn some of your artifacts into 5/5 creatures.
Yeah, all of these play around with artifacts. They want a big board of artifacts. They want to manipulate what those artifacts does. And the Herald of Anguish is pretty much doing the same thing. He sits a little bit higher in the curve than some of these cards. But because of Improvise, he can actually come out mid-game around about the same time you'd say play a Tezzeret or something like that. Which makes it a good, interesting strategy. But it's not what we went for.
My mono black deck, which I've aptly named Heralding in Mono Black. So to start off with the deck, we've got obviously the 4 Heralds of Anguish. I've also added 3 Painful Lessons to this deck, which give me a bit of draw, just to cycle through the deck a bit quicker. It helps me get to my Heralds a bit quicker. I've added some artifacts to it. 0 cost Ornithopter, just taps for 1 mana, 0/2 blocker at the start. Scrapheap Scrounger, 2 cost for a 3/2. He can't block. Again, taps for mana or attacks quite well. Bontu's Monument, which is just great in a creature-heavy mono black deck. Reducing the cost of your creatures, incidental life drain and gain. It's a powerful card. Servo Schematic, a 2 cost artifact that actually brings out a 1/1 servo, so you can then tap those 2 for 2 mana with Improvise. I've also added Bone Picker to this deck because I like Bone Picker. Also, we can switch him on really easily with the turning him only into a 1 black mana because we've got so many cards that can kill things quickly. We're playing black, so we've got to play some jerky black cards.
Of course.
Gifted Aetherborn, 2 cost 2/3, lifelink Death Touch. He's going to stall the board and either block anything or just give you some life. And Gonti, Lord of Luxury.
He's a buff.
I think people forget how much of a jerk Gonti can be. And then just some removal in the deck. Fatal Pushes and Bontu's Last Reckoning, in case anything ever happens and people start bringing out more creatures than you can deal with. Bontu's Last Reckoning is going to deal with that quite easily. To finish up, just 18 Swamp and 4 Blighted Fen for a bit of difference. Paying 5 mana to get someone to sacrifice a creature does cost a lot, but when it gets into late game, it works well.
Alright, I have a black and a white deck. I've aptly called it Black-White Artifact Spam of Anguish. So starting off, we have the playset of the Herald of Anguish. Makes perfect sense, and I don't have any way of drawing cards in my deck, but I've added in 4 Diabolic Tutors, which may seem like overkill, but we really have to make sure the Herald of Anguish comes out. I'm having a lot of issues with this deck if he doesn't come out. He basically capitalizing on a strategy, and he gives you the win conditions to shut out the game. So I really want to make sure he comes out. And in a bit of a clutch situation, I can also tutor out something that helps me play a Herald, which in playtesting has been a useful thing as well. We have a whole heap of get lots of artifact cards, 3 copies of Servo Exhibition and Sram's Expertise. The ideal situation with this is you have one of each of these in hand and you Srams into a Servo Exhibition. That way you get 5 tokens for 4 mana. Very powerful, very cool. We also have 4 copies of Hidden Stockpile, which can generate servos remotely if anything leaves the game, and it also has a way of killing off one of my servos each turn to scry 1. So we're getting efficiency out of our deck, we're making sure we're getting into the cards we want every turn, and if we manage to get down multiple copies of Hidden Stockpile in a game, which we can do quite easily because we have 4 copies in the deck and they're relatively cheap to play, it means we're generating 2 tokens every turn, which helps us ramp into anything that costs improvise. 4 Ornithopters, obviously, 0 cost, free improvisation. It's amazing. Always do it, guys. And 4 Thraben Inspectors. Great for a 1-drop on your first turn. You then have a clue, which itself taps for improvise, which is so powerful. If the game's going slowly and we have a clue out, we can always sack it to draw a card. It's not an ideal situation, but it's something we can do out of desperation, which is very handy. We also have a few artifacts in this deck. We have one of the Bontu's Monument, which I think you can agree, Justin, is fantastic when we have a black creature that improvises. It itself brings down the cost of Herald of Anguish and also taps to play him, which is very good. So it's a 3 cost and it approaches the Herald of Anguish by a factor of 2 mana, which is fantastic. 3 Implements of Malice, really cool as well. It's a bit slow at 2 mana. I would have preferred it to be 1, but it also helps us trigger our revolt abilities, which is fantastic. Hidden Stockpile, if you have Implement of Malice and 1 or 2 copies of Hidden Stockpile, I can sack the Implement of Malice and get a servo instead. Ideally, we just want servos, as many servos as possible, and that helps us get towards playing Herald of Anguish.
So maybe after playtesting for a bit, maybe change the implements to maybe a Servo Schematic?
Yeah, I had to think about that. I like Implement because it also attacks my opponent hand, which is quite good with the Heralds. If I can force them to lose some cards early and then get 1 or 2 Heralds on the table, it also means that they're probably going to lose things that are more important. The more I attack their hand, the more likely they're going to lose that big creature that was going to win them the game, which I quite like. The Servo Schematic's cool because it gets you 2 artifacts right then and there, and then when it dies, it replaces itself with another servo. I get it. I think both of these cards work really well. I just err on the side of Implement of Malice for my deck. We also have a bit of removal. We have a playset of Fatal Push and a playset of Battle at the Bridge. Battle at the Bridge is insane in this deck. Anything that wants to spam out artifacts and get Herald of Anguish also triggers Battle at the Bridge. You can cast this for a ridiculously disgusting high amount of mana, and it can kill gods, it can get you a sick amount of life. It is fantastic. It can turn an entire game around for you, which I really like. Oddly enough, Herald of Anguish, I've discovered in playtesting, tends to come out first, and then you try and close out games with Battle of the Bridge. Okay. Which is kind of weird if you think about it, because it looks like it's a cheaper card. I mean, if you get it in your opening hand, you can sort of panic and play it early just to make sure that creature that costs 1 or 2 mana isn't completely dismantling your game. But when it comes out late game, you can quite easily cost it for like 10, 11, 12 because of all the artifacts you have out. And then you destroy anything on your opponent's board and get that much life. Yep. It's quite disgusting. Only works at sorcery speed, but that's probably fair enough. My land base consists of 4 Concealed Courtyards. Makes sense. We want to make sure we have the mana fixing right at the start of the game. I want to make sure that the Thraben Inspector always comes out turn 1 if I have him in my hand, so I don't want to be stuck with a bunch of swamps, which indeed I have actually outnumbered the plains with. We have 8 plains and 10 swamps. Now, the reason I tilted this slightly towards swamps is because we have Herald of Anguish that needs 2 black mana, and we have Diabolic Tutor that needs 2 black mana. I found in playtesting, if I made it even, I far too often just got 1 black mana when I just needed to get that extra black mana to tutor out the Herald or play the Herald. So we've made sure that happens, but the Concealed Courtyards make sure that we have the white mana right at the start, and the more swamps make sure we have more black mana towards the end. It's very, very important that both of those things happen for me in this deck. But we've gone ahead and playtested this by goldfishing this, and we've discovered that in a really good scenario in both our decks, Herald can come out in turn 4, which is really, really strong for a card like that, but sort of average, sort of 5, 6, 7, easily. And hopefully by turn 9 or 10, which is sort of like the stage in standard games where you want a really powerful board that's going to win you a game, we can comfortably get at 2, maybe 3 in a really good situation.
Yeah.
And multiples of that card attacking your opponent's hand, having that triggered ability to attack their board. Both of our decks have really strong removal. We can dismantle our opponent's game state really easily, which is kind of what we're going for here in both our decks. We've gone about it different ways. Justin has a much more powerful creature base. I have a much more powerful artifact base.
My deck, it's a mono black control deck, or I tried to build it as close to controlling as I could. I believe Nick's is more sort of an aristocrat's build. He's wanting to just build up a couple of small creatures and then all of a sudden bring out Herald of Anguish, which makes sense.
You got it, man. That's it.
If you want to lose about a quarter of the price, maybe half.
It's nearly half in my deck. I know what you're talking about.
It's the Fatal Push.
The Fatal Pushes, yeah. It cost 4 times as much as the Mythic Rare in this deck.
I know.
The card is just disgusting.
Yeah.
It's about $8 US at the moment on TCG Player.
Yeah.
And the Herald of Anguish is less than $2. I mean, for example, your deck works out at $63.67. That's nearly half of your deck. My deck works out at $74.05. That, again, is nearly half my deck. Probably close to a third.
The only other things you can put in is other black removal. It's just that Fatal Push does the removal so well costed, and that's why it's the better card.
And particularly in these decks, we're making sure we're sacking a lot of creatures, and the Revolt ability on Fatal Push is going to turn on over and over again. For 1 mana at instant speed, it is absolutely disgusting. The only thing that I can really think of that might make an okay replacement for this in certain situations is Murder. Murder has no converted mana cost cap on it, so if your opponent's playing like really, really big creatures only, it actually works out as a better option. But just at 3 mana, it's getting in the way of Bontu's Monument. It's getting in the way of a lot of really cool creatures, so it's not ideal. However, you can get a playset of it for about $2. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So anyway, guys, what we're going to do now is we're going to link you to the Facebook page, which you can jump on and have a look at. We're going to be revealing another card on that we're going to create decks for next week. Again, we're going to stick to standard just to keep this nice and easy for the time being. If you guys want to mention in the comments, oh, you should do this card, you should do that card, let us know. We'll have a go at it. We're pretty much open to anything. Anything that's nice and flavorful. If you just say like, oh, make a deck around Murder. Well, there's not a lot we can do with that. That's not really that fun. Herald of Anguish is fantastic because we've got a lot of different things going on with the card, and that's what we want to focus on. It inspires a lot of creativity, these kinds of cards, and that's what we want to build stuff around. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video. See you later.
Bye.